like the Japanese entertainment industry to this day, if you turn on television, you'll see the same talents on TV
all the time,
night after night. And the reason is because there are a few large production companies still controlling everything. The big shows I was in, there wasn't an audition. The big casting is all done by the productions behind the scenes.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, sitting here today in the studio with Greg Irwin. Thank you so much for coming all the way to Osaka to see us.
Thank you. We're recording on the hottest day of the year.
Yeah, it is very, very hot this summer, as every summer, and it's probably going to get worse.
Yes, exactly.
You're a singer, you're a master of ceremonies. You've done many, many things here in Japan over the nearly 4 decades that you've been here.
Crazy.
So we have many really cool stories to hear from you today.
Thank you.
And very excited to hear them. And maybe we start at the beginning with what brought you here in the first place.
To make a long story short, I wanted to be a Broadway actor. That was my dream. So I went to theater school. And in my senior year of college, the lighting girl, one of the women that worked in lighting, fell in love with me. And we moved in together. And I realized, wow, this is not going to work. So I was trying to get out of the relationship. And I met a friend who was going to Hawaii for winter quarter. And she said, Greg, why don't we go to Hawaii for winter quarter? And to me, it was the perfect escape from the relationship. Mm-hmm. So I moved to Hawaii. And in Hawaii, I tried to get a job as a singer. I was only, 20 years old. But in Hawaii, they're not interested in Caucasian men from Wisconsin singing. Of course, people want to hear Hawaiian music. So a lot of friends at the time told me, you should go to Japan, Greg. In Japan, you being a Caucasian singer with blonde hair, that's not, that's an asset. So why don't you go to Japan? But I never really had the opportunity to go to Japan until one day I was in Waikiki and a young Japanese came up to me and said, Greg, he didn't know my name. He said, I'm looking for a job. Could you help me find a job? Just ask me on the street.
On the street of Waikiki, just walks up to you like, I need a job. You look like someone who can give me one.
Can you help me get a job? And then I did. I helped him to get a job. And then he suggested to me, why don't you come to Japan and stay with my family for the summer? That was it. I mean, I didn't really plan my life very well. And at the time, I was very young, and I thought, what a great idea, go to Japan, stay with his family for 3 months. So I moved to Japan.
Is Japan a country that you have ever really considered before, or when you were thinking as a student, or even before that kind of, one day maybe I'll go to Japan? Or was this the first time you thought about it when your friends in Hawaii were kind of bringing that up?
It's amazing because I grew up in Wisconsin. My father was 24 years older than my mother. And so he kind of had a prejudice towards Japan. So when I was in junior high school, I remember going to the public library and looking at books on Japan just to kind of get back at my father. And I was kind of fascinated by the street scenes and kabuki actors and the gardens and the baths, the whole thing like that. So I had this kind of a vague interest as a junior high school student. But nowadays, of course, we have so many people who are into anime and stuff like that. They're really into Japan. I never watched any anime. I really had no Japanese connection. I really was going to be a Broadway actor. That was my dream since I went to New York the first time. I thought, this is where I should live. This is where I'm going to live my life when I get out of Wisconsin.
And then you got out of Wisconsin, not to New York, but to Hawaii. And suddenly you end up in Japan. Do you remember that time you first arrived to kind of go to stay with your, I was going to say your friend, but the man you helped on the street of Waikiki to get a job?
Yeah, crazy. In those days, Haneda Airport was the main airport. Can you believe it? I was here before Narita Airport, going way back. I remember it super well. I remember the first thing I did, I had learned a little bit of Japanese. And in Hawaii, the people in Japanese Americans kind of speak old-fashioned Japanese. So they use the word benjo for toilet, which is
Benjo.
benjo, which is like a really low-class way to say toilet. So I remember getting off the airplane and I needed to use the restroom, and first thing I asked was benjo wa doko desu ka? And all the Japanese like laughed, like, oh my god, he said benjo. So and I remember the urinals, they had the word toto, right, which is of course the Judy Garland's dog from Dorothy's dog from The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah.
Toto. So I'm like, oh, Toto, Dorothy's dog. And the urinals were really short at the time. I kind of had to bend down, it was interesting. And and then I went to my homestay, and that was a crazy experience.
What was so crazy about it?
Well, the first night, the father of the homestay, he brought up this huge bottle of sake. And in those days, they had really large bottles of beer. Now they've stopped that in Japan. But they used to have these huge bottles of beer that they've lowered. They've made the size smaller
like
now.
1.5 liter?
I guess so,
wow.
yeah. So the first night they ordered sushi, and it was the big welcome to Japan thing, and tried to get me drunk. And then the next day, I got the rules. They sat me down and gave me the official rules of the homestay. And the main rule was I could never leave the house alone.
That was the main rule.
Yes,
you get to
it's
Japan,
now,
welcome to our house, but you don't leave by yourself.
Yes, and it's kind of cute when you think about it now. I mean, it's just unthinkable. And even it was unthinkable in those days. But they were like, you can never leave the house alone because you don't speak Japanese. So you might get lost, and that will be a huge problem for us. So it's no problem, because anytime you go out, we will take you. And so you always can go with us, but never, ever leave alone. Even being in Japan all these years, I really have never heard that again, being told to never leave alone. So it came around to like the weekday, and they all went to work. And I'm sitting in the house, and I think I did it for about 3 days. They gave me the Japan Times, and you can read the newspaper. We didn't have cell phones in those days. So I literally sat there like just desperate, not able to leave. I was 26 years old. I had been in Hawaii for, on my own for 5 years. So I think they still have it. There was an ad in the Japan Times for the English Lifeline, which I think it's still available. You can call if you're in trouble in Japan in some kind of situation. It's called the English Lifeline. And I saw this number, so I called the number. And I was like, I'm in this homestay. They won't let me out. I'm like, they won't let me leave alone. So whoever answered the phone, she was great. And she's like, you should write them a letter. Tell them that you went out and just leave. So
Just disappear.
Yeah, so I wrote a letter. I'm really, really sorry, but I went out. And I went out, and it's kind of a funny story because I got on the train and I was wearing short pants. It was in the summer. And long ago in Japan, Japanese men did not wear short pants, even on the hottest day of the year. Shorts were a Western thing. And over like the last 20 years, they've become popular. But I was wearing these short pants. And these two British girls were sitting across the street, from me on the train. And they started laughing at me and sort of smiling and talking. And I said hello to them. And I explained my situation. And they were like, oh, you should come live with us. They were living above a kendo dojo. And I moved in with them the next week. Met them the first time on the train.
Meet on the train and quickly move out of the homestay into a dojo. That's a very unusual place to have an apartment.
To live in a dojo, yeah. And it broke my host family's heart. They poured guilt on me, telling me that, their house wasn't big enough. And they were very upset that I left. But so I left. I only stayed for a few weeks. And then the first night in the dojo, suddenly around 8 o'clock, all these people screaming and pounding. And we lived right next to the train. It was so funny.
So very
the
low
Tojo line. The train went by, and then the people were all screaming. It was quite the place. So
in the one home, you had plenty of space, a lot of quiet time. In the other one, you didn't, but you could go out whenever you wanted.
Actually, no space in the first home. Japanese houses are small, but to be honest, my first house was the smallest Japanese house I've ever been in.
In one of these kind of
Like a five mat. I had a little 5 mat room. Yeah, exactly. But the dojo was interesting. And I'm still friends with those two British
oh,
girls.
really? Are they still in Japan?
Amazing. No, no, no. They left many, many years ago. But they still live in UK, and I'm friends with them on Facebook.
That's very nice.
So cool, yeah.
You came to Japan with a dream, though. You were still looking for your career as a singer, actor, and now you're here. You have a new place to stay. How did you go about to kind of find a way to work or to find your first gig?
Well, back in those days, before I came to Japan, actually, I went to the University of Hawaii, and I met someone who was a singer in Japan, and then he gave me a list of 5 places that I could try to get a job singing in Japan. Now, when I look back at it now, it's incredibly naive. I was so naive. But first was the military base. I honestly went to the military base.
Like Yokosuka or...
Yeah, innocently thinking the new Sano Hotel at the time. It was in Akasaka in those days. Thinking that I honestly could get a job singing at the military base. Well, that didn't work out. Then there's a place called the Tokyo American Club, which is still a beautiful place. And I went to the Tokyo American Club. They were like, we don't really hire singers. So I went down the list, and the final place on the list was a hostess bar, actually, in Roppongi. And he's like, well, if all else fails, try calling this hostess bar. And it was run by a foreign woman, actually a British woman. And so I called, and she's like, well, come in, audition, bring your guitar. In those days, I had a guitar. I brought the guitar in, and she's like, okay, sing, just sing it for the customers. So I sang a few songs. She's like, okay, start tomorrow night. So really, I got a job singing there within about a month. And then I worked as an English teacher, typical. I worked at Tokyo Disneyland, actually. In those days, you could work at Tokyo Disneyland in the day, and then I could do night jobs. After they switched it, so now you had to work there all day. You couldn't do just an afternoon job. I worked there during the afternoons. Then I would teach English. And then after teaching English, I would go to the club and sing till 12:30.
That's a busy day.
Crazy.
Where were you singing at Tokyo Disneyland?
Actually, I was in the parade,
Okay.
the Tokyo Disneyland parade, and I did some announcements at that time for Tokyo Disneyland. Yeah, that was another story too, a great story.
You came to Japan and you started looking for jobs. Did you kind of have an idea of oh, I want to stay here now, I want to try to make a career? Or were you still thinking about maybe trying to go back to Broadway in New York?
Yeah, I always thought temporarily I would be living here and that I would eventually save money. And the plan was always to move to New York City. So the first time I stayed for 3 years, then I felt, no, this is not right. I'm supposed to be a New York actor. That's what I wanted to be. So I went back to Hawaii, actually, at the time. And then I came back to Japan one more time, went back to Hawaii again, and went back to the university. And at that time, I majored in Japanese because I needed to complete my bachelor's degree. And when I finished my bachelor's degree in Japanese, again, I honestly thought I was going to go to New York. But again, I got another offer to come back to Japan. So I came back to Japan. And then now I've made peace with living in Japan.
Nearly 40 years?
Yeah, crazy.
What was it that kind of gave you the sense of maybe I can make a career here in Japan and kind of make peace with it, as you said?
Well, I just, many years ago, I did a kind of a motivational speaking seminar. And the teacher said, ride the horse in the direction it's going. And that always kind of stuck in my mind. And Japan always gave me offers. Japan always pulled me back. So I always just coming back to Japan, and I kept coming back to Japan. And I have such a wonderful life in Japan. And so I'm completely pissed. What is it? Probably I really always liked my work. Um,
So a big part of your work has been voice acting.
yeah.
From what I read online, you kind of stumbled into this accidentally as well.
Yeah.
How did you get into it?
Again, it all kind of stemmed from Hawaii. When I went back to Hawaii the first time, I could speak a little bit of Japanese because I'd lived here 3 years. And I had a Japanese friend who was on the Japanese radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, Greg, you're really talkative. You should come and be on the radio. And I had never been on the radio. I'd never spoken in front of a microphone before. But I thought just for fun, I'll go. And I got in the studio and I'm like, what should I do? And he's like, Greg, just talk. And then the radio station offered me a program on the Japanese radio station in Hawaii.
Oh.
Yeah, actually at that time they had 2 stations. Now they still have 1. So I had a radio program in Hawaii in which a lot of Japanese celebrities came and they were on my program. It was really great experience.
So that was done in English or in
Japanese.
In Japanese, wow.
Yeah. And then when I finished college the second time, I came back to Japan and naively, again, thinking, well, I have a radio program in Hawaii on the Japanese station. I can get a radio program on one of the major Japanese radio stations. So I went to the big FM stations. And of course, it was closed. They were like, oh, that's nice. You had a program in Hawaii, but we're not interested. So I had a landlord at the time who saw an advertisement again in a newspaper that was for a DJ contest. And she said, Greg, why don't you enter this DJ contest? Because one of the prizes is a radio show actually on FM Yokohama.
That's an interesting prize for...
Crazy.
Because it's one thing to participate in a DJ contest. It's another to run a radio show.
To get a program. Yeah, a short program. But so I entered this DJ contest. The FM Yokohama DJ contest, and I won the second prize. And the second prize was the radio show. And the first prize was like a bigger prize, but I didn't win the first prize. So I got this radio show. And then when I started doing the radio show, I started to get offers to do voiceovers. And then I learned about the voiceover career, just very organically. It didn't happen like I didn't think I'm going to be a voice actor. It always happened just very naturally. Like they say in Japan, bend with the bamboo. I mean, that's the way I always did. I never had any kind of big plan. And now I got into voiceovers. Now I've been a voiceover artist for like over 20 years.
Some of the big gigs you've done, you've worked for them on Street Fighter, the video game where you've done voices.
Yeah.
How did that one happen?
The Street Fighter gig. Actually, games, I was here when games began. And they used to hire us in Japan to do a lot of voiceovers for the games. Actually, last week I did 2 big games.
Oh,
so it's
are you allowed to talk about it?
Still
or
continuing.
is this,
I cannot announce both games exactly, unfortunately.
So we'll have to get all the games when they come out and see if you can recognize your voice.
You can look at my website, see when they come out. Yeah, but the Street Fighter one is kind of fun because it was kind of iconic. It turned out to be a little bit iconic. I mean, I can do it if it's not gonna
go for
hurt
it.
the mic. Street Fighter, basically like doing game voices. You go in the studio, you get a huge gallon of water, and you drink water the whole time, and then you spend the whole day dying.
That's one way to describe it.
Stop it! Go! Yeah! You're there! Oh, you got it! Okay! Like over and over and over and over again. Yeah. But Street Fighter turned out to be kind of a big game because now all over the world we have these like Street Fighter fans who occasionally contact me. They find me or something.
Did you realize back then that you would be the voice of such a big game that's kind of spanned over decades and still has such a huge fan base?
Well, that's very kind of you to say that. But no, I didn't realize that. And I'm not, I think like most professional voice actors, we're not really gamers. We're not really anime freaks. We provide the voice, we do the job, and then afterwards we don't like play our game or something like that.
But perhaps for the job that's even better because then you can focus just on doing the voice well without necessarily too much emotional attachment.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And just this last month I ended up getting a very large voice game job, which was a miracle. I mean, every voiceover job is nowadays is like a little miracle when you get it. It's extremely competitive industry.
Do you
And
usually
so,
record yourself at home, or do you go to their studio, or how do the recordings happen?
well, the voiceover industry has changed a lot. When I first started out as a voice actor, people who were voice people became voice actors. However, in the last few years, like many model agencies, they're like, okay, wow, we can make money doing voiceovers. So everybody make a voice sample. Everybody can be a voice actor. And so it kind of flooded the industry here in Japan with voice actors. And basically, a lot of people have started making their own like home studios and stuff. Fortunately, I have a lot of work like as a wedding. Now I'm doing wedding MC, wedding reception MCs. So I'm not really forced to do the home studio thing. But a lot of voice actors, yeah, now have created their own voice acting home studios. They record at home. I always record in big fancy studios in Tokyo.
One place where you probably recorded in a big studio was for the NTT Commercial. You Got Mail. I think that one was a big hit here in Japan, and you became the voice of that. Did you notice any kind of different way of working when you work for these big corporations for these kind of large budget commercials than, for example, in the game industry? Is there a different approach, or is it more or less the same across industries?
Well, in Japan, when you get a big job like that, actually, yeah, I was the voice of You Got Mail in Japan, which used to be the cell phone ringtone, which a lot of Japanese used that. And there is the huge advertising agency, which you probably know who they are.
Yes.
There are these huge advertising agencies, and then they have a production agency, and then sometimes there are even two production agencies. And then sometimes the production agency has another production agency, and then that production agency hires the voiceover agency. So, for example, like You Got Mail, you might go in there, it would be like 15 people there. I mean, it's just this huge thing. Like they say the suits, all the people are there from all the production company thing. But the great thing about You Got Mail was it was an audition. And I did the audition. You got mail. And like we did like 1,000 You Got Mails. You got mail. You got mail. You got mail.
And that's why you drink a gallon of water before.
But for You Got Mail, they took the audition, which was amazing. I didn't have to go back to the studio again and record it again.
Oh, so during the audition, whatever the sample you recorded there was later used for that sound.
Exactly. They keep sometimes. That's very rare. I also did the Nissan voice actually for several years ago. It used to be Life Together. That was it. Life Together. But that was a great job too. And that too was, they just used my audition voice. And I didn't have to go back to the studio again. Just paid me for the audition.
But the You Got Mail must be interesting because it's a ringtone and a lot of people are using it, as you mentioned. So there must have been situations where you walk around the streets and someone's phone rings and it's your voice. You Got Mail. And
it's really fun. Also, I've done the airline announcements, and flying on the airline when your voice is on the airline. It's pretty cool. It's really amazing because actually the voiceover industry is quite interesting because normally when you hear a voice, like we hear them all the time, somebody's voice, you're not thinking, wow, whose voice is that? Right? It's just natural that it's there. But when it's your voice, it's pretty cool. And because the voiceover industry in Japan is still pretty small, even though we have so many people wanting to be voice actors in Japan right now, the people who get the most jobs are still the basic core, like real voice actors.
Those who do it like professionally. As a career.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's funny because I kind of had all my friends, like I go to the bank and use the ATM. My friend is the voice. Go to, the subway. Oh, that's my friend's the voice. You go on an escalator at the airport. Oh, there she is.
So you're never alone when you go around.
No, I know everybody. I know everybody's voice. In fact, it's quite rare to not know who the voice is now. I'm like, I don't know that voice. Who is that? Sometimes I'll ask my friends, who's doing the voice for like Orb Theater?
Once you had the opportunity to be on these big commercial or ringtones or airlines, how does this change your career? You suddenly have your voice recognized across Japan. You've worked with larger companies and you kind of have a name for yourself in this voice acting field. For someone who kind of came without a real plan, your career must have suddenly taken a sort of trajectory at the time.
You might think that, but the entertainment industry is the same all over the world. Like there's a song, a Stephen Sondheim song, everything you do, you still audition. It's so true. So it's like, for example, I'm not comparing myself with people who win Tony Awards or Academy Awards or something like that. But one of the interesting things about people who win those awards, what they always say is like they won the Tony Award on Broadway and then nobody called them for 2 years. And it's the same way, the reality with these voices. Like I might have been the You Got Mail guy in Japan, but that's not going to like suddenly now everybody wants to use my voice. In fact, most projects, they want something fresh. They want something new. So we kind of keep that quiet. Like when I go to a job, I would never say I did this voice and that voice and another voice, because the director might think, well, maybe we shouldn't use this guy because the voice shouldn't be too recognizable as well. So actually, it doesn't really change your life that much. You get paid and you look for the next job.
Is there a job that you'd like to do in voice acting? A game you'd like to have your voice in, or an announcement that you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
Well, it's funny. I think my voiceover skills have been mostly limited to Japan. It would be fun to branch out, like maybe Mideast, China, go to other countries. As an American, it'd be great to do the voiceover for the Academy Awards, this kind of high profile voice. But the reality is you have to move to Los Angeles. You have to really be in that market to be recognized. So
one of the ways you've been abroad, though, is by working on cruise ships.
Yeah.
You've been on the Asuka and the Nippon Maru,
Yes.
and that's taken you all over the world. Can you tell me a little bit about how you set foot on the ship?
Well, it was such an incredible blessing, to be honest. I met a director who asked me, "Would you want to sing on the cruise ship, on the Japanese cruise ship?" And I was sure. I thought that'd be great. So our first cruise was to Ogasawara, the islands in the south of Japan. And back in those days, they had more money. So we had dancers. I had another Japanese singer I sang with. We had like a month of rehearsals, went on the ship. And the first one was Ogasawara. And then that went well. And then the director's like, well, Greg, you could probably do your own show. So why don't you do your own show? And at the time I thought, gee, I didn't know I could do it myself. But so he actually directed it. I really appreciated that. And our next cruise was the South Pacific. The South Pacific is amazing. We forget how amazing the South Pacific is until you go there.
So which area would that be? Which places would you make stops at?
I did the South Pacific twice. And we went to New Caledonia, Truk, these little tiny little islands, kind of like forgotten about islands. Another time, they told me, Greg, this is crazy, we want you to get on the ship in Tahiti and then take the ship from Tahiti to Hawaii and Hawaii to Japan. I mean, it's crazy. Now I look back, I think. I mean, I have an angel watching over me. So at that time, I was single, and I thought, wow, Tahiti, I'm going to go for a whole month. So I spent a week on each of the major islands, like Moorea, Bora Bora, Tahiti. And then I got on the ship and went back to Japan on the ship. I went to Hawaii and then so it was such a blessing. And I have so many great stories from the cruise ships,
Which ones are some of the most memorable to you?
One of the most memorable was we were near Sri Lanka. I was in the room and the captain announced, there's a beautiful sunset. Why don't you go up and look at the sunset, everybody? And I had seen a lot of sunsets. I thought, I don't know if I need to go. Well, I'll go up. So I went up. And as I went up, it's called a super pod of dolphins. A pod of dolphin is like a group of dolphins. A super pod is thousands of dolphins all come
Oh,
together. And it turned out there was a super pod of dolphins coming towards the ship just as the most perfect sunset. The sun was literally sinking in the ocean, and thousands of dolphins were like jumping in front of the sunset. And they all came near the ship, and the Japanese were all just like, they're gonna hit the ship. They have radar, so they don't hit the ship. And the scene was so incredibly breathtakingly beautiful, everyone started to cry. It's really true. It's the only time it's happened in my life.
that's something straight out of a movie.
They all started crying. We were just so moved by the beauty of it. And I felt afterwards, like when I go back to Tokyo and we're having a bad day or something, we should remember that it's such a beautiful world. There are these breathtakingly beautiful scenes happening on the earth right now. And like us, we just happen to be there. But no one would have seen that beautiful scene. We just happened to see that. It was just spectacular. Another time, actually from Hawaii, um, because I'd been in Hawaii, I was really nostalgic as we left Hawaii. I wanted to wait and see the last bit of Oahu as it sank into the ocean. So all the passengers went in to eat dinner, and I waited in the back of the ship watching Hawaii sink away as just all by myself. And this is a true story. It sounds like I'm making it up. It's really true. And all of a sudden I heard a and a huge whale like jumped out of the sea. And it was just the whale and me. It was just like Ernest Hemingway, The Old Man in the Sea. And I just was there with a whale. And then the whale was just spectacular. Then it turned out there were two whales. And there was no one else there except me and the whale. And then the captain announced, there's whales, there's whales. And suddenly all the Japanese come out. That was a pretty good story. Can I tell you just a few more?
Yes.
There's a really funny one when we went to Jordan. And in Jordan, there's this amazing place called Petra, which is where they filmed Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it's become this huge tourist attraction. But when we went, it was not this huge tourist attraction. So we had to go on a 2-hour bus ride through the desert to get to Petra. And the Japanese tour guide, in those days, the Japanese tour guides felt they had to speak all the time.
With a little microphone
Yes.
and just kind of.
So there were 2 hours going through the desert, okay? And it's quite a famous desert. It's where Moses apparently saw the burning bush, and where the Jews, the Jewish people went through the desert for 40 years or something. So we're starting to go towards Petra, and the Japanese tour guide says, well, you know, everyone, it's a 2-hour drive through the desert to get to Petra. So I realize it's a very long ride. So I've decided to tell you the story of the Bible. And it's quite a long story. And if you are tired, you can feel free to rest. But I've learned the story. So from right now, I will begin to tell you the story of the Bible to get some context so that you'll understand what desert we're going through. So God created the world in 7 days. And this tour guide told the story of the Bible for 2 hours. Everybody slept except me, you know, because I'm like, somebody should listen to her. So it's quite fascinating. Going to Petra, that was quite a funny story. Yeah.
It seems like the time on a cruise ship really left a lot of impressions on you. What was life like on these boats when you kind of spend a month at sea and go from one island to the next? And you working as an entertainer, right? So you have your shows. Is there a routine for you when you're traveling on the boat?
To work on a cruise ship, you either really love it or you don't love it. You know, you're confined to a very small space. Of course, your room, the food is great. It's very difficult work-wise because you leave your world. You leave Tokyo. You have to be willing to be away so right now, I really don't think I could do it. I haven't done these long cruises like I used to do. But yeah, you walk on the deck, listening to music. You just have this ideal life, to be honest. The ocean changes every day. You kind of study the ocean.
You can kind of get a feel for the weather patterns when
Yeah,
you're about to get
some
into a
days it's
storm.
calm, some days it's choppy. We had a time when this sounds like it's made up as well, but there are areas where there are pirates, and the captain will announce we're going through a pirate area, and they lock all the doors and they speed up the ship, and you have to be careful because they have pirates will attack cruise ships actually. And now they've created these huge cruise ships, right? These monstrosity
They're getting
cruise
bigger and
ships.
bigger.
Yeah, with casinos and shopping centers and everything. So I'm really grateful I was not on one of those. We were really in touch with nature. Another really cool, my last cruise ship story was one day I was walking and an older Japanese woman said, "Greg, could you sit with me for a while?" And I said, "Sure." And I sat next to her and she said, during the war, we left Tokyo and we stayed out of Tokyo for, about a year. And when we came back, the Americans had bombed our house with a B-52, and we lost everything. Everything of my childhood was destroyed. And I've always wanted to tell that to an American. She just paused. I was like, I'm so sorry. And we just kind of like hugged and had this really special like moment together.
She must have carried this with her for a long time.
Yeah, I'm glad she could get that out. The Japanese cruise ships, the passengers are elderly. So you have a lot of chance to talk to the elderly people.
For you at the time, your career is kind of continuing as well. Are you still working when you're back in Tokyo on other projects, or were you doing like the cruise ship full time for a few years?
Yeah, that we're talking now like 20 years ago, when I did the around the world twice. I did the halfway around the world, did some really great stuff. After that, I got pets, I got in a relationship, I got a house, I got so now actually up until 2018, I started doing only like 10 days cruises, which is still amazing. And I've been able to choose, I'll go from here to here or something. It's a real blessing. I
It's
mean,
not,
how fortunate.
yeah, when you have the luxury to choose where you go and when you go,
Crazy.
it's like a holiday for you as well at the same time.
Yeah, it is for me. And I always would take a holiday wherever I got off or where I got on or something. Yeah, exactly.
When you're not on a cruise ship, one of the big projects you worked on is translating Japanese children's songs, Douyo, right?
Yeah.
For which you even received an award. How did you get to translate those? What started this? I think you've done like over 100.
Yeah. I mean, all my stories have kind of a long build up. Please forgive me.
No, I'm here for it.
I mean, I was a songwriter from the time I was probably in high school, but I never pursued it professionally. And when I moved to Japan, I met a Japanese songwriter quite accidentally. And he listened to some of my songs and he's like, "Greg, you're a songwriter. Why aren't you like writing songs for people?" And I am like, I didn't really know how to go about it. So he had lived in Nashville, Tennessee. So he said, "Greg, come to Nashville with me." And it's funny because a Japanese guy took me, an American, to Nashville,
Of all places.
of all places, and brought me around to these places in Nashville, introducing me to these Americans in the music industry in Nashville. And I was kind of blown away on how open the industry was compared to Japan, which Japan music industry is not very open. The entertainment industry in general, it's not like welcome, welcome, welcome. So I came back to Japan. And actually, in Nashville, they told me, if you really want to be a songwriter, you have to move to Los Angeles. So actually, I went to Los Angeles. And I had an offer even to stay in Los Angeles. And I had lived in Hawaii. So I just never had a bond with Los Angeles. And I decided to come back to Japan.
The horse was still riding that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the horse was going that way. I just didn't want to leave Japan and move to Los Angeles to have a possible songwriting career. Who knows? So I thought, okay, I'll put songwriter on my business card. That's what I did. And then I met a producer through a voiceover job. And he saw songwriter and he's like, Greg, you can speak Japanese and you're a songwriter. Why don't you translate this genre of music called Douyo, which are these great songs? And we're looking for someone who would write the English version. So it started out I just as a job. Like I literally like one song, how much kind of thing. And I went and I bought this huge dictionary. We didn't have G Translate.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started translating the songs. And because I was a songwriter and a singer, I'd sing the song as I translated to make sure it was singable. And I first translated 10 of them, and I was just blown away by them. They were so beautiful, and they're very moving in Japanese. They're also very moving in English. So I brought the songs in, and we recorded them actually. And the producer was like, "You found your life work, Greg. This is this is what you should be doing. So do 10 more." So I did 10 more, and actually that turned out to be a career for 20 years. And the real reason I did the cruise ships all those years was singing Douyo, because the Douyo are Japanese old songs that the elderly people especially like. So because I could sing those songs, I was valuable on the Japanese cruise ship.
Wow.
So that's how I started. And then it was amazing. I had always wanted to be an actor in New York. And at that time, Tokyo and New York had a sister city relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a concert of Douyo at New York's Lincoln Center. And of course, they invited me because I was the only guy who could speak English. So I got to perform the Douyo songs in New York. And I performed them all over Japan. And even today, even though I'm not focusing on the Douyo right now, my songs are still on iTunes and I still get royalties every month from my Douyo songs.
How do you approach the translation of those songs? Because the music is already done, right? You cannot really change the music. So you've got lyrics that are in Japanese of a traditional song with like maybe deeper meanings behind the words, and you have to convey this in English from scratch, right? You had to. You said you went to get the dictionary and translated word by word, but how did you kind of manage to maintain the essence of those to the point that the producer was really like, this is your life's work?
You have to love Japan and you have to love the Japanese. Basically, I would translate the song. It came out very literal, like a literal translation. So actually, I asked many people. I would ask taxi drivers. I remember I asked the Kanrinin, the guy
You'd sing it for them in the back while you're taking a ride through Tokyo, and
Actually, no. Actually, yeah, exactly. What I would do, I would say, like, when you hear this song, like now it's summer, there's a famous song called Natsu no Omoide. When summer comes, I translate it into English. So when you hear the song Natsu no Omoide, what do you feel? What does that song mean to you? And actually, it means a lot to Japanese people. They don't talk about it unless you ask them. And then I remember like Natsu no Moide was like, oh my God, my grandmother taught me that song. It makes me feel so nostalgic. And so I kind of, actually, I would unplug my phone, turn off the phone. It's honestly true. I would light candles and incense. And I really did it spiritually, to be honestly. It was kind of a spiritual thing. And then the different people that I'd heard from, and I made the songs more singable in English. So I kind of take the translations and I stretch them here and there because they don't really work in English. I wanted the songs to work as a song in English. So when you hear the song in English, it doesn't sound like a translated song.
it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. So, and I think I did a pretty good job. I won an award.
The Japan Douyo Culture Prize.
Yeah, exactly. That was amazing. Cool.
You said earlier that in voice acting, you don't want to brag so much about which job you've done, because then maybe another employer might not want your voice for their project because your voice has been used already. But in this case, what does receiving that award mean for you? It's a unique distinction that you've gotten for a life's work of translating those songs and making them, kind of conveying the essence of them into another language and giving other people an opportunity to kind of hear a part of Japanese culture.
Right, exactly. Actually, I was the first person to win that award, the Douyo Culture Prize, and then I'm the only Westerner. And actually, it was quite controversial when they gave it to me, giving it to a Westerner. And so some people in the industry were like kind of shocked. Mm-hmm. Why would a Westerner get this award? But I just feel like incredibly grateful for it. And even though right now I'm not focusing on Douyo as a career right now, actually all of the really great things that have happened to me in Japan came from the root of me translating those songs. It helped me to meet amazing, wonderful people. It helped me to understand the Japanese on a deeper level, I think, than the surface level. But even today, like I'll be walking down the street sometime and hear those songs, or like at 5 o'clock, actually they still play the songs at 5 o'clock over the loudspeakers. Mm-hmm. And I translated all the songs. It's really cool. You know, it's an underlying thing in Japan that people don't really talk about or think about, but it's there.
And it kind of started because you took a chance and just wrote songwriter on your business card and handed it to the right person.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of cool, you know. I mean, people plan their lives out much more than I did. So
we talked about a big part of your career on the cruise ships and translating and singing the Douyo songs. But what you're doing now a lot of is emceeing events. You've hosted conventions with Mark Hamill, the Star Wars convention. And you've done, I think, officiated over 1,000 weddings in Japan. Yeah. Was this something you've been doing from the start when you got here to kind of work on weddings, or is this something that kind of came later?
Actually, I was asked to join an entertainment agency, a Geino production, mm-hmm. and I did this for 3 years, and it was a very unhappy time in my life. And when I left the Geino agency, and I left the record contract that I had. I had a record contract with Victor Entertainment for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And so when I left that agency, I was kind of like worried, what am I going to do? And one of my friends said, Greg, you know, you're an MC. Why don't you MC wedding receptions? And I'm really grateful because, again, I really found out about this later in Japan. I didn't do that from the very beginning. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And I'm very grateful to him for him suggesting that. But because I had no experience emceeing wedding receptions, and the major Japanese hotels in Tokyo would not take any MC who had never had a experience.
You need to show you can do it first.
Right. So there was a wedding venue in Yamanashi, which this MC wanted to leave, actually. Mm-hmm. And he said, why don't I bring you to Yamanashi, see if you can learn how to do it there. So he took me to Yamanashi, and I met the president of a wedding venue there. And he was really great. He just looked at my MC resume. He's like, oh yeah, of course you can be a wedding reception MC. We'll teach you how to do it. So I did it for about a year in Yamanashi. Then I got introduced to a hotel in Tokyo. It just kind of spring-rolled. And now I'm doing it every weekend. I do
Still today, every weekend?
Still today. 2, occasionally 4 on a weekend. It's crazy. It's wonderful. It's such a blessing. It's the greatest job in the world.
I worked at a hotel before working here, and we also used to have these wedding receptions. Yes. And usually they're very short. It's very intense and very brief, and it's like very timed to the minute. And when it's
Yes.
done, people, what is your experience kind of doing wedding after wedding? How do you perceive those?
Yeah, it's fascinating. The Japanese wedding reception is 2.5 hours long.
To the minute and then it's
Yes,
finished.
it's 2 hours and 30 minutes. And so the timing is incredibly, incredibly important. I have found, what I have to remember, even though I've done so many wedding receptions, but to the bride and groom, it's their wedding. It's, it's their biggest day, probably of their life up until that point.
Hmm.
So I always treasure them. And that 2.5 hours is just got to be the best wedding ever. So I focus a lot on the bride and groom, and then of course you work with the the captain. It's called the person who runs the room and
Hmm.
the wedding planner, and there's a lot of different people involved. And yeah, you're right, and it's like really very very tight timing. You can't make a mistake. Japan is very unforgiving of mistakes, especially in the wedding industry because it's so short. So it's not like a Western wedding reception where everybody's having fun and just laughing and having a good time. And if you made a mistake, it would be like, ah, you made a mistake. How funny. In Japan, you made a mistake. It's over.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. So I learned like I learned how to do it basically. One of the most important things I learned was never take on negative energy or never take on nervous energy from anyone around you. And it's a great lesson in life, not necessarily just in the wedding reception. But sometimes doing that very limited 2.5 hours, maybe the person who runs the dining room is not a very nice person, or maybe there are people working who are not as thrilled to be there as we would expect, or there's sometimes maybe the planner is freaked out, or and sometimes it's just like there's this nervous energy. You can never take on any of that
How do you
energy.
prevent that from affecting you?
So I just create like a wall, and I just I heard many years ago of a friend of mine who was a famous singer here. He told me the most important thing in entertainment is love your audience. I mean, that's just 3 words, but they're so important. So if I just it might sound funny, but I really love the bride and groom, the families, the guests. I want them to have the greatest time, and I just focus on them. The guests, the bride and grooms, everybody, they're just having the most wonderful time in the world. It's sometimes the other people,
Mhm.
are just noise. So you just block that out. You don't allow it in.
2.5 hours, no room for error. Does it become then more like a stage performance, like if you'd be performing on Broadway, where you have your lines and you have your timings and you have to go through things, as opposed to you gave the example in the West, people might crack a joke or they might kind of improvise something, or people will laugh, take a moment. You can't really do that. You have to kind of follow the schedule.
Right. It really is so much like theater, like especially now lately, like a wedding I did yesterday. Sometimes they have me do the entrance of the MC in the very beginning. And you do your entrance, and then we have an opening movie, and then we do their entrance. I do it in Japanese and English, and the whole thing is like a production. Also, I because I'm a singer, a professional singer, I often sing like one song. I offer that to them as a gift. If they would like me to sing a song, I can. We do something called the Love Train, where we all like join together in a Congo train. It's just something I thought up that would be fun, um, and just different kind of fun things. And yeah, we keep it very, very tight. And then you have the fun part. And then at the end in Japan, the bride you often reads a letter of thanks to her parents, something
Mhm.
we do not have in the West at all. It's a very tearful time. At the end, everybody cries. You have to orchestrate the whole thing.
One wedding that I've been at, I thought there was a very touching moment where, also towards the end, both the bride and groom they gave a bag of rice to their parents with the exact same weight they were at birth.
Yes.
I thought that was like very touching.
It's so sweet. Yeah.
But for you, having seen over 1,000 weddings and officiated them yesterday and probably some more this week, are there some that really stood out to you, kind of experiences where you're like, that was quite the wedding? That was maybe unusual for the 2.5 hours that we had.
So many have really stood out to me. And, you know, you meet so many couples. First of all, you meet them in the first meeting. And my job is to connect with them and to find out exactly what they want in their wedding reception. And then my job is to serve them to make it the most incredible reception. They're incredibly grateful. And imagine doing a job, you know, and after you finish the job, the people tell you it was the happiest day in their life. And thank you so much, you know, that you played a big part in the happiest day of their life. I mean, what's better than that?
Yeah, there's not many jobs where you get that.
Right, exactly. So it's such a great job. But a lot of people don't want to do it because they're nervous about exactly the time limitations, and the strictness behind the surface of it.
You don't only MC weddings, you also do events and conventions and more. Yes. What makes a good MC in Japan that is maybe perhaps different than if you'd MC an event in the United States?
Interesting, because I have MC'd events in the United States as well, and for Western audiences and in Japan. And I personally don't see a huge difference. I think what you need to do is you have to be confident. You have to have your script. Preparation is the key to everything. Mm-hmm. As long as your script is well, you're well prepared, and you have to have a good time, and don't be nervous, you know. And if you are nervous, the audience will notice that you're nervous. So I find if you're just yourself and you have a good time, and the audience will have a good time with you. So I don't notice a huge difference. I mean, Japanese audiences might be more shy, but I've learned how to like break the ice with Japanese audience as well.
What's the trick?
A trick with Japanese audience will be like, I was the guy who said, "You got mail."
If you have that in your resume, I can imagine that works.
You know, just some little kind of fun thing, you know, to kind of make them relax. You know, also another thing we have not mentioned is Japanese wedding reception MCs. You have to speak honorific form of Japanese. Sometimes the Japanese wedding MCs, of which there are, of course, the majority, they are so formal that it's overly formal. So therefore, sometimes the guests can't really relax because they feel they have to be so formal.
The language is too heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
The wording is too long.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll hear this like incredibly unique formal sentences from other Japanese MCs. And I've asked some wedding planners, well, should I say that? And they're like, no, don't ever say that, because they're choosing you, an American, to be the MC. They don't want to have the super polite, formal Japanese wedding MC.
You got into MCing weddings after working for 3 years with this Douyo agency, this entertainment agency. You said that wasn't a happy time in your life.
Yeah.
What was that period like, working for this entertainment agency for 3 years under contract?
Well, you know, when I was younger, I just wanted to be like quote unquote famous, right? And then because after I won the Douyo Culture Prize and I was getting recognized on some major music TV shows, a producer met me and asked me, would I be willing to join his entertainment production company? And I joined it, yeah. And so for 3 years, I was with a Douyo production. A Japanese entertainment production company is like a marriage. You have a good marriage or you have a bad marriage. For me, it wasn't a really good marriage. The main reason was they completely control your schedule, 100%. So I really lost my freedom. It's extremely difficult financially. the smallest amount they would take would be 30% of your income. 30.
Wow.
Oh, that's
The
in
minimum.
the West, we have 10% agent fee. It's very famous. In Japan, the minimum would be 30, but the majority take 50% of your income. After that, they take taxes out of what you are left with. And I just found it to be too constricting on me. My agency put me in big plays. I was at the Shimbashi Theater, the Embujo Theater, the
Which are like
Misanosa
national
in
stages.
Nagoya. Yeah, big stages. These big stage shows. It was the very unhappy time in my life. Like, for example, theater in the States, like when I would be in a show in the States, we'd be in a play together. We all became really good friends.
Hmm.
Like we had this tight family
You're
thing.
the group, the crew that
The
were.
crew, the whole
Mm.
bit, we just became really tight. And so I assumed in Japan, when I got in these big stage shows, it would be a little bit similar to the West. I mean, that's what I had wanted to do, to be on Broadway. But in Japan, it wasn't fun. I mean, the shows I was in were 3.5 hours long,
It's
twice a
long.
day. So you're literally 7 hours a day. And then you have a very short break. And because everyone is in a different agency, the shows I were like professional shows. So everyone was like with different agencies. So people are, I don't mean to be negative. I'm a very positive person, but the actors were like fakey nice. So you really didn't get in kind of a bonding at all.
Because you're not working to make that play. An agency is sending you to fill a role in this play just for this period of time, and then you're going to be sent to do something else. It's not like you wanted to play in Shakespeare and everyone wants to kind of do a reinterpretation of it.
Right.
That's interesting.
And you have to remember, like the Japanese entertainment industry to this day, if you turn on television, you'll see the same talents on TV
All the time.
night after night. And the reason is because the Japanese entertainment industry has really never been exposed. There are a few large production companies still controlling everything. So, for example, in Japan, if there's going to be a new TV show on, in the States, they would honestly have auditions. Of course, you have agents and you have publicists who would send you for an audition. But in Japan, you don't have auditions. So the theater was the same.
Mm.
The big shows I was in, there wasn't an audition where you went and you auditioned. And now some shows have auditions for smaller parts, but the big casting is all done by the productions behind the scenes. And this is just commonplace in Japan. Also, actors are not protected here. We don't have equity, we don't have unions. So there's no one really protecting actors or voice actors or singers in Japan. It's just the way it is. And if anybody wants to try to start a union or wants to try to organize, they'll be blacklisted. That's true.
So for you, getting out of that into emceeing weddings and being there for the most important day of many people's lives was a blessing. It was a very positive twist on your career.
Thank you. That's so nice of you.
And
yes, exactly.
Now you are still emceeing weddings. You are still occasionally going on cruise ships that you enjoy for like a shorter period of time, participating in other events here and there. Very successful career by all means. Looking back, what is one risk that you took that you feel very grateful that you did take?
When I look back upon my life, I am grateful that I just went with the flow and I didn't overthink anything. My friend suggested, why don't we go to Hawaii? And I'm like, yeah, great idea. And my friend in Waikiki was like, why don't you come to Japan? I just came to Japan. I really, when I think back on it, it was incredibly free. I had a really great time living in Hawaii, a great time living in Japan. I've always had a really good time in my life. So how fortunate. So that's I guess, thing, that I just freely did was able to go with the flow in my life.
Looking back, you've seen Japan change over multiple decades. What are some of these changes that kind of stuck with you, that really, this is very different today than it is when I first arrived?
The greatest change for me in Japan is not only in Japan, it's all over the world, but it's been the invention of the smartphone, the cell phone. As we know, the cell phone is a blessing and it's a curse. And I'm so grateful that when I moved to Japan, we didn't have the culture of everyone staring at their phones all the time. Like I told you before, when I got on the train, I met these two British girls who invited me to stay with them. On the street where I live, we have foreigners living on the street. Before, when I moved to Japan, foreigners would see each other on the street, and we'd like give a little smile or give like a little acknowledgement that we were foreigners. I'm not saying being the American, like, hi, where are you from? I mean, I understand that, like Europeans or, different people don't necessarily greet in the same way American people do. However, like the street that I'm living on, foreigners will walk down my street. I'll see them see me, and they'll make an effort to not look at me.
They don't walk by.
Yeah. And I'd like to say, even like to foreigners watching this program, you are not Japanese. As hard as you try to be Japanese, you're never going to look Japanese. You're not Japanese. So I guess there used to be a more camaraderie of foreigners living in Japan, and we connected, and it was more fun. And unfortunately, as we know, the Japanese people are very shy. They're very insular as it is. So the cell phone has just made it way worse. So everybody's always looking at their cell phone, including me. I mean, I'm the worst. Trust me. I'm always looking at my cell phone too. But it just controls us. So as a result, I think maybe Japanese society was more fun. Of course, it was also, I was here during the bubble period. Financially, people were maybe doing better. But just generally, I would like it for people to just look up from their phones a little bit. Also, in Japan, you have to make the first move. Remember, a lot of foreigners will say like, oh, it's really hard to make Japanese friends. I don't have any Japanese friends. Well, first you have to learn Japanese if you want to make Japanese friends, if you want to make real Japanese friends. And you have to be the aggressive one. And just if you could just accept that, you should be the aggressive person. Say hello to that Japanese person, and and take time. It takes Japanese relationships take more time probably than Western relationships, but they can be just as great and just as deep and wonderful. So I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah. So the biggest change, positive and negative, the smartphone.
The smartphone. That's all over the world. The smartphone is really a blessing and a curse. I heard the other day, actually, a friend of mine said, what someone should invent is a camera that you can put on the top of your head, like, here, and it can be filming in front of you so that it can be watching. So you never, ever have to look up from your cell phone. You can be looking at just
that will be a nightmare.
Exactly. I mean, that's really how it's become,
Greg Irwin, you've done so many things in Japan. You mentioned you have 2 video games that you've just recorded a voice for that you can't name, but we'll keep an eye out for them.
Thank you.
What are some of the other projects that you still want to do here and that you'd love to work on if you had the opportunity to?
Japan is a blessing because you can keep working in Japan. Really, there's no really age restrictions. So I would like to get into public speaking right now. It's my next thing that I would like to do. I always loved motivational speaking. And I loved motivational speakers. I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, Louise Hay. I always was a kind of a self-help junkie. I love all that stuff. So I think it would be nice to do this kind of motivational speaking for Japanese people, maybe mixing it with my Douyo music. That's kind of a fun career. I think I could take it out.
You said earlier in our conversation that one of the quotes from one of these motivational speaks that really kind of impacted you was the idea of riding the horse in the direction that it's running.
Right.
Do you already have your quote for when you will do your own speech? What will be the advice you'd give if you were to stand on stage and make a speech?
Wow, that's really amazing.
You haven't thought about that one yet. Well, maybe that's food for thought, and once you're ready, you can share it with us. And I'm very curious what you'll come up with.
How interesting! Yeah, I should have prepared that.
But thank you so much for coming and sharing your fantastic story. It was super interesting for me, and I'm amazed by all the things you've gotten to do. Is there perhaps something that you would have liked to share, talk about, another anecdote on the cruise ship that you didn't get to bring up before we wrap up our conversation?
Maybe I like the question, what is success for you? That was kind of nice. Maybe
oh, yes, I had that written down.
That was kind of nice.
What does success mean to you now?
Well, I think when I first moved to Japan, I would think success would have been like to be like famous or to be rich or something like that. But now at this time in my life, I'm in a very good relationship. I'm a good relationship with my family. I love the work that I do. I have 5 pets. I have 3 dogs and 2 cats. My pets are all healthy and well. And I'm very happy. You know, sometimes I'll ask myself, how happy are you? And it's always like 100%. You know, it's a very happy time in my life. So to me, that is success, you know, not necessarily having, you know, being a millionaire or being a super famous person. Just to be happy in your own skin, that's success.
And be surrounded by the people you love and that love you.
Exactly. That's right.
Greg Irwin, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back in the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.